I had a dream job since I was a child. I wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher in Mexico. She used to teach adults how to read and write. And this was in the early 90s. There was a big economic crisis in Mexico. And I remember my mom used to teach at this school in this part of Aguascalientes where I'm from called La Estrella. And this neighborhood was really poor. You know, they had like shanty houses, cardboard houses, and my mom would take the bus for like an hour to get to this part of the city. And all her students loved her. Her students would show up on time to her classes. They would bring food on Christmas, celebrate her birthday, and I didn't understand why they loved her so much, you know. But one day, there was this lady, this old lady, and she was like on her 70s, and her only son came to the United States to work so he could send money, you know, so they could support themselves. And this woman didn't know how to read or write. So she went to my mom's class so she could learn, because she wanted to be able to read her son's letters. Because at that time, like a calling card to call the United States was very expensive. It was like 10 minutes for $10, you know. So if you're working making minimum wage, you couldn't buy one of those calling cards. So she wanted to learn how to read and write, to communicate with her son. And I remember it was Christmas, and she showed up extra early to my mom's class, and she asked my mom to share something with the class. And my mom said, yes, you know, whatever you want to share. And I remember she stood up, and she got a little wrinkled paper out of her bolsa, out of her bag, and she said, I want to share the first letter I'm able to write to my son. And I remember seeing just this light on her eyes, and I was like, I want to see the light again. And her first words of that letter was, Mi hijo ya sé leer, ya sé escribir. My son, I know how to read. I know how to write. And that's when I knew I wanted to become a teacher. I wanted to see that same light again and again and again. When I talk about my path in education, I think it started from when I was little, right, with my mom's vision of bringing me to the United States, my grandma's effort and sacrifice to bring me to this country. And even though they didn't get to go to the university, they knew the importance of education. You know, my grandmother brought me to this country when I was 13. And one of the promises that she made me do to her was that I was going to go to college, no matter what. So she passed away the day before I started college. And I showed up to the first day of classes because I had promised her, you know, that I would continue my education. And it took me a little longer because I was undocumented for a long time. So I couldn't get a lot of the scholarships, right? Sometimes I had to work up to 3 jobs so I could pay my tuition. I had to borrow money. I had to apply for scholarships that wouldn't require documentation. And so I had a very different path. But I think if there's like a message or a lesson in my experience, is that no matter what, you can still work it out. And that as educators, as allies, as accomplices, we need to do a better job of being those allies and those accomplices to get every student to and through the college of their dreams, right? It doesn't matter if you're undocumented. You still get to fulfill your dream. You know, it's gonna be harder. It's not gonna be easy, but we need to make it possible. I wanted to become the teacher that I needed in high school. I came to this country when I was 13. And when I teach, there's this concept that we have, which is in Lakesh, right? Which is an indigenous concept that says, you are my other me. Every time I look at an ESL, at an emergent bilingual student, and an immigrant student, I see myself. And I want to become that elder that I needed. That elder that is needed in our community, that example, the positive example, right? So I think that's what I love about my job, that I get to be an activist that I get to be a positive influence, and more than anything, that I get to disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline. You know, two of my siblings went through the school-to-prison pipeline, one of them still in jail. So what I love from my job is that I'm able to interrupt that, and that my students know that I believe in them. And through that process, they believe in themselves, and and then they make positive change in our community. So this is a consejo. This is a piece of advice, more of an affirmation. You are intelligent, you're smart, you're enough, and you belong. My first year, as I was completing my bachelor's degree, I took this class that was very challenging. There was a lot of grad students in that class, and I was the only undergrad. I was the only Latino in that class. So I felt at some point that I didn't belong there, right? I felt that imposter syndrome. And I also felt that survivor's guilt to know that many of my friends didn't make it to college with me. And I got frustrated because I didn't understand a lot of the words, a lot of the academic language. And I went to my mentor, Dr. Anita Revilla, and I told her, I can't take this class, I'm gonna drop out. Like they are having all these complicated, elevated conversations, and I feel like I have nothing to add. And she looked at me and she said, anything they know, you can learn. And I did, and I mastered it. So anything that anybody knows you can learn. It might take you showing up for tutoring, looking up some tutorials on YouTube, asking your friends, reading that extra book, but you can learn it, And it's important to remember that anything they know, you can learn. My name is Juan Carlos Espinoza-Cuellar, and I teach Mexican home economics. Just kidding, I teach Spanish.